Hey, beautiful friends, welcome back to another episode of The Robin Graham Show. Do you ever feel tired because you feel lost in the shuffle of all the online noise? You haven't figured out how to be that one in your industry, the go to authority or expert. You're ready for the next step to create an enterprise or become a serial entrepreneur, making the kind of money that you've always dreamt of making and having the impact you've always dreamt of having. Well, today's guest is going to give us exactly what we need to become that one in our own individual industries. Welcome to the Robin Graham Show, the podcast for purpose-driven women who want to achieve sustainable success without having to be on social media. Mike, welcome to the Robin Graham Show.
What's up, Dr. Robin Graham? So happy to be here. Thank you for having me. I'm excited. Let's go.
Let's go. We are going to get some energy going here, guys. Mike, before we start, will you just tell the listeners a little bit about you and what brought you to this point in your journey? Because it's very similar to mine, where it's been linear. You've kind of done a lot of different things, but that entrepreneurial mindset, the ability to be a visionary and to grow enterprises is a gift that you have.
Yeah, well, I got to, attribute that to all the mentors that I've had, also the experiences that I've had in this world. But watching from the start, my dad, my uncles, my grandfathers be entrepreneurs, and then on the other side, see my mom and my stepfather being working for someone and trading time for money. To me, it was a clear decision, a choice of where I wanted to go with it. But also, Robin, being around a lot of brokenness growing up, I just have this people builder heart. Like I want to build people. I want to help people. And at an early age, I was very observant and I noticed basically a phenomenon that was happening with all the brokenness in my family, with anxiety, depression, alcohol, you name it, divorce. I saw this thing happening where these folks in my family would tell a story of why they were experiencing these things, living this way, being the way they were being. And then they would continuously go into that path of living the way their story was being told. And I was like, this is crazy. You can't see this. Like you can't see you're telling a story and living it out. And so I had to do the opposite. If that's the case, and I was calling them out as well. But if I was doing that, I had to live a life of telling a story of why I was going to be successful in some form or fashion and then go live that out. And so I think that was a good foundation for me. But also, I'm a believer in Christ. I'm a follower of Jesus and server to the people, just like Jesus was, and not just like, I should say. I'm trying to be just like him, and I think that foundation as well guides me pretty well when it comes to service and really being obsessed with helping people.
Mm-hmm. I love that because he really does give us the foundation, right, of service, the heart of service, and that's what we should strive for. So I love that you brought that into it. And I would imagine as a kid growing up in that dysfunctional environment, you have to grasp at something. So you were smart, you were wise, probably beyond your years to see what was happening and to be able to diagnose it and then shift your mind to be able to create something completely different and unique for your own journey instead of staying in that same rut or same path of muck and mire per se that so
Yeah.
many people ahead of you stayed in.
Yeah, and I remember as a young age praying a lot when I was a kid. I'd always pray right before I go to bed. I'd pray. My mom taught me that. We weren't in a super religious household. We didn't go to church that much. But I think when it comes down to relationship,
Uh-huh.
that's the most important part. And I've always had a relationship ever since I was 5, 6 years old, when I heard about Jesus. And then that leads me to be able to have better relationships with people as well. Because that
Mm-hmm.
relationship, is something that very firm and just never wavers.
Yeah.
And so that allows me to be like that when I'm interacting with other people.
Yeah. Yeah. So you just mentioned something that I love to talk about, and that's relationship marketing. And as we go through the course of our conversation today, we're going to talk about becoming that one in our industry. But I think the heart of or the core of a successful business is being able to build relationships. And when you build those relationships, they become so foundational within your business that they basically market for you. So I would love to, because I think this is super cool. You have over 1 million followers on Instagram. I will never get there because I have no desire to get there and be on Instagram. But I know that you have done that through relationships. So I love that you brought in, okay, yes, we have our relationship with Christ, and that becomes so foundational with our entire lives, right? And how we go out and build relationships with other people. How have you used that in your business, and how have you grown this immense following?
Well, I've been in sales since 1998. So I realized like if you want to sell something, you got to be able to build relationship with people. From the first contact that you have with them, you have to start building relationship. And that comes from really, to me, showing interest in the person you're talking to. So many people run off at the mouth and they're so excited to talk about themselves and share everything that they've done or what they're doing or what their problems are, even worse, what their problems are, right? And for me, it was always showing interest in that person, like finding out what they're working on, what's got their attention right now, where's their thoughts and focus right now. Maybe it's a problem, maybe they're celebrating something, but asking the question, really, what's going on right now? What's got your attention? What's got your focus?
Mhm.
And then finding out from there, like where are you going? Like what is your vision? What are your goals? In anything you're selling, if you're selling something and the person's come to you, they have a goal. They have a reason that they've come to you or you've interacted with them for some reason. Well,
Mhm.
getting really clear on that and in their mind of what that reason is powerful. And so by doing this and showing interest, number one, people feel important. They feel like they're cared about. They feel that somebody's trying to serve them. And then, but what it allows me to do is allows me to hear and be an active listener. And then I can speak into what they're focused on right now. I can speak into what their vision and goal is. I can offer assistance and help with connection, strategy, encouragement, whatever. And I've always been like that, but I really never identified. I think it was more subconscious when I was
Mhm.
younger. But as I got older, I started to realize like when I'm having success, this is what happens. When I have people respond well to me, this is what I did. And when it doesn't go that well and it's more of a transaction,
Mhm.
I see that I didn't do the things that I normally do. And so I can
Mm.
reflect upon that and assess that. And then it allows me to be really focused on leaning into those things going forward to get the best results for people.
So what I'm hearing you say is you get curious.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I think curiosity is one of those values that so many people overlook. And we get intimidated or afraid to ask questions. But when you approach life and business and relationships from that place of curiosity, I think it opens the door to be able to discover so much about another person that it makes it, I guess, easy to sell without selling because you get your curiosity brings out information from them that then gives you complete clarity on what their pain points are, what their needs, wants, and desires, goals, like you said, are. And then it's just about having a conversation.
Yeah, and you will close every single person that you run into if you do this the right way, if they have the wherewithal, if they have the ability to pay you for your service. Because sometimes
Hmm.
you could do everything right and then you don't get a sale, you don't get a client, and it's not that you did something wrong. It's just they don't have the wherewithal. So qualifying the person that you're talking to is very important. But if you do these things, you'll close pretty much every time because of the fact that you're speaking into what they already said they need.
Hmm.
Now the other thing you mentioned, curiosity. So I've learned that the number one barrier to learning new things in life is thinking you know everything. So many
True.
people, and I was like this when I was younger, so many people, they act like they know everything and they want to be the smartest person in the room. In any conversation they have, they want to tell everybody what they know. And what happens is you fail to be observant and you fail to be curious when you take on that state of Mr. or Mrs. Know It All.
Hmm.
Right. And so, one of the things I really love to do is I love to not play dumb, but just I don't need to divulge everything I know. And I like to go into rooms and I like to ask questions and be observant and curious because it also can change my thoughts on things, my beliefs on things, my perception and
Hmm.
perspective too. And so I think people need to really assess themselves often to say, hey, am I being a know it all? Am I observing and being curious enough because all that's important in elevation in your life to make you a better person, make you more powerful, more able person.
Hmm.
And so I'm glad you mentioned curiosity.
Yeah, it's one of my values, and it's funny. So My friends all know me so well, my family, because when I get into like an Uber, right? I'm going to ask questions. I want to get to know everything I can possibly know about someone in as short amount of time as I possibly can, right? So I don't leave many questions without being said. And my girlfriend sent me a meme the other day, and it was this man getting into an Uber, and he's asking the driver all these questions. And I just sent a message back to her and said, "Me question mark?" And she's like, laugh out loud. Yes. But it's that you can learn so much by getting curious. And I just think it's one of the most powerful gifts we have within us, especially if we are a business owner and we have something to sell in air quotes, but that is going to be able to have a big impact on other people. Because if we're not getting curious about other people's needs and what it is they're saying, we're not going to be able to craft messaging that is going to resonate with them and be clear for them as to we're the ones to solve this problem.
What do you think that when I get an Uber, what do you think I am? Do you think I interview the person, or do you think I just sit there quietly?
I guarantee you talk to them.
I talk to every single one of them.
Yep.
Doormen at hotels, front desk people, bartend, you name it. The waiter, waitress. I'm talking to all of them, man. I want
Yep.
to know everything like I can. And you know what's funny? My friends used to tease me all the time because they would go out on a date when we were in college, and when they got back, I would want to know all the details. And they called me Mr. Detail. And they kind of discouraged me with it, right? But I thought, and I was like, is there something wrong with me? I just want to know what's going on. I want to know
Yeah.
about you. I want to know your experience. And
Yeah.
so it's funny you said that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's funny. And you've got kids, right? You've got
Mhm.
and my young, well, okay, early 20s and teens are mine. And it's I want to know everything. And they're like, why are you so nosy? Why do you have to know everything, mom? And I'm like, I just want to be part of your life. But they're like, why do you need all these details? So I
Yeah.
guess it's kind of it's a blessing and a curse at the same time, right? This
Well,
this gift of curiosity.
you have to be careful because there's God's business, there's your business, and there's other people's business, and you want to stay in your own business.
Ah,
So there is a
yeah,
line. There is a line. You don't want to get caught up in
absolutely.
the gossip and
No,
being nosy. But there's a way to
no.
go about it. You know, it's one thing to be interested in somebody, but it's another thing to be prying into
Yeah.
someone's
And
business.
that doesn't serve anyone, right?
Right.
Because then it puts off and you don't get to know them at all because they
Right.
immediately put up a wall. So
Yeah.
yeah, it is about, and I think that's a gift that we learn over time, right? Like
Yeah.
you have to get to know the person first. So you do that through curiosity, but then you have to measure the level of curiosity and where this person's willing to go. And I think that comes with experience of building relationships.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Okay. So
Yeah.
this is all part of personal branding, marketing, communicating what you're really good at so that you can become that one in your industry. So let's talk about that, Mike. Like what are the keys to becoming that one?
Well, let me tell you a story. So I was in the mortgage real estate space for 20 years. And the first company I worked for, I think it was 9 years I was there. I did everything I could to brand that company, the name of that company, but I never talked about myself. My name was in the email signature. My name might have been in my email, but I never branded myself, talked about myself much. It was all about branding this company, and that company started to crumble. And I attached my identity to the name of that company. And I remember in 2018 when it started to crumble, it was one of the darkest times of my life. Not only the business was not doing well, I had a situation where I had 22 employees at the time, their families. I felt like I was responsible to, and here I had no idea what to do because my identity was gone, and it was because I didn't build my identity. My identity was that company's name.
Mm-hmm.
And so after that point, I said, I actually broke down in my kitchen in front of my wife, which is not something I ever want to do again. But I just said I felt like I had the weight of the world on my shoulders. I don't know where to go. What could be next? I don't even. So what the problem I found is that I was identifying with my vehicle versus identifying with who I actually am. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't even know who I was at the time. And that's a very dark place to be. In all the interviews, I've done over 900 interviews on my show. I've been on over 1,100 podcasts as a guest. All the darkest times of everybody I've ever talked to was when they attached their identity to what they do, their vehicle. See, you have a mission that you can identify for yourself. You can find your core values, your non-negotiables, your standards, and your vision where you want to go. That becomes who you are. Then you can hop in and out of vehicles, like a job, like a business, like a title, whatever. Those are vehicles. And when those vehicles slow down, or you just don't want to do them anymore, or they crash or whatever, your identity is not crashing. And so what I learned, it was a huge lesson, 2018, not that long ago, was I want to be in vehicles. And if I want to change a vehicle, I give myself permission to change the vehicle I'm in. I can, whatever, but my identity is intact. And that's why I branded the Ciorroc brand, is because Mike Ciorroc is an individual with an identity, and it's branded out there that can hop in different vehicles. Mm-hmm. And so that was a huge lesson for me. So when I figured that out, I vowed to never, ever, ever let that happen again. And I started focusing on, I got to get known globally. Now, not everybody needs to say that, but it just came to me one day, like, you have the ability to, performance expert, you know how to scale businesses, you know how to build brands, you're a people builder at heart. People need on this planet, need to know you. And so I started committing to being known globally. Now, I had no idea, Robin, how to do this. Okay, this is a very important lesson as well. Most people don't commit on an intention or set an intention because they don't know the how. Mm-hmm. And the how doesn't come first. Mm-hmm. The how comes later. Creativity on the how comes later, after you commit and set an intention. Because what happens, I have a formula that when you set an intention, which is a decision, you decide on an intention, that gives your attention direction. There's billions of things, as we sit here on this podcast right now, there's billions of things we could be paying attention to. And just like anything that has a finite amount, attention units are finite. There's only so many attention units we have to be able to pay attention to the billion things that are around us. So when you set your attention has direction on what to focus on now. And all of a sudden you start to see things that you never saw before that were right in front of you all along. And when I realized this, I started paying attention to the ways that I could get known globally. And podcasting fell in my lap. And a guy invited me on a show. I'm embarrassed to say this based on what we do now, but I didn't even know what a podcast was 6 years ago. And a guy invited me on a show, and I told him no. And I said, dude, I don't even have an iPod. I thought you had to have an iPod. You remember those?
Yep.
I don't have an iPod. I can't. He's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I guess I don't know what I'm talking about. And eventually he got me on the show. And while I was on this podcast, I had a spiritual awakening. I had this energy come on to me. I can't explain it, except maybe it was confidence. Maybe it was like somebody was like cared about what I had to say. But I just felt so aligned. And I thought to myself, if I can bottle this, I will be unstoppable. And so I got off that podcast. I called my assistant, Kim. I said, Kim, I need to get on podcasts every single day. I'm clear the schedule, whatever we got to do. She's like, okay, but how? And I was like, I don't know. You don't need to know. We're just going to do it. And all of a sudden I started seeing podcasts everywhere. Your reticular activating system starts recognizing, because it's directed now on the thing that you set an intention for. So I started seeing podcasts everywhere. I started seeing people that I knew, that I was close to, that had podcasts that I had no idea. And I started reaching out, getting on their show. I started putting reps in. I would be the first guest on shows. I would be on women's shows talking about women that, no, I wouldn't talk about it, but they would be talking about on that show, perimenopause, all kinds of different things. And I was just on the shows talking about my thing and putting reps in. And I ended up going on 7 to 10 shows a week. I did that for 5 years. That's why I've been on over 1,100 shows as a guest. But that created expertise. I developed communication skills, relationship capital, leverage, because I had content and relationships to leverage now. I also had, what else? I always talk about these things, leverage, skill, assets. I had content, which was an asset now. The relationships were assets. Mm-hmm. So all these things came to me, and I started to realize these valuable things that came from podcasting, and found that it was the most efficient and effective way to get your message out and become known.
Yeah.
And so once I did that, I developed this amazing network from top entrepreneurs, New York Times bestselling authors, actors, producers, athletes, celebrities. And I started thinking, wow, man, this is the network thing. But then what came next, to wrap this up, is that I kept hearing the term, your network is your net worth. Your network is your net worth. Your network. And I was like, wow, I feel bad because I'm not utilizing this network. And I don't really even know how. And the problem I found was that I was focused on myself. And I was focused on how can this network benefit me? And then it came to me one day in prayer. It was like God told me basically, dude, this network isn't for you. I created this network. You did the work and the network grew and all that, but it's not for you. It's for other people. Your job, your mission is to catalyze connection so that other people can get on their mission and have it move faster and further because of what you worked on. And once I came with that uh, awareness, everything changed. And that's where that one, the brand came from, because we want to help people become that one through these methods that we learned on my journey to get known globally.
I love it so much. So, for someone that is sitting there thinking, gosh, well, I don't want to go on a podcast. I don't know what I'd say, or what if I make a mistake, or, fear is holding them back from actually stepping into becoming a podcast guest or starting their own podcast. What would you say to them?
So the obstacle is the way, is what I'll tell them.
Oh, I
You have
love
the
that book,
obstacle,
Ryan
that's the way to
Holiday.
go. You don't go the opposite way. You don't go any other, try to get around it. You go through it. And so what I always know is if things get hard, lean in. If there's an obstacle, if there's fear, I lean into it, because I know if I lean into it, the fear goes away. Fear will run from you when you lean into it, but it will chase you if you run from it. Once you understand these laws in the universe, you become unstoppable. And so I would suggest anyone understand, just start a podcast, start going on a new show, anybody that'll accept you. And when you get on there, just have 3 stories to tell. And the story should revolve around a problem you had in your life, the action you took on that problem, and the results that you got. And that should be in a story form. And you'll be amazed how many people relate to you and the results you get from using that framework.
Mm-hmm. I love it. And I just had this conversation with a client, and she said, we were talking about podcast pitching. She's a divorce recovery coach, and she's, doesn't want to be on social media. She has got this incredible gift to be able to help other people. And so we've been talking about podcast guesting and everything. And she has her list now of her podcast she wants to pitch. But she said, I'm really afraid that what if I don't perform well? And I'm like, but you have control over that, because you can tell them, here's my expertise. Here are questions to ask me. Here are concepts that we can discuss. So you actually have control of that conversation. And when someone invites you on their show, they're trusting you to bring value to their listeners, which if they're trusting you, their people are going to trust you. So their audience immediately becomes a warm audience. That took so much pressure off of her when she could recognize that she actually has control over the content that's going to be discussed. And I think if everybody just approached it that way, that if you have these gifts, this expertise that you can share and have an impact, you need to reach a bigger audience. And if they're going to trust you, their audience is going to trust you, and it takes out so much of the nurture, the need to nurture these people before they're actually going to be interested in hiring you.
Well, and also they're not going to trust you until you trust yourself. And how do you
Amen.
trust
Yes,
yourself?
yes.
Right? How do you trust
Yeah.
yourself? Well, you got to stop focusing on yourself when it comes to being on a podcast. You focus on yourself when you're working on yourself, developing your skills, learning, personal development, spirituality, whatever it needs to get better. But the fact of the matter is that when you go on a show, prior to the show and going into the podcast, you need to make it about the audience, and not, the focus shouldn't be on you anymore. That takes the nervousness away.
Mm-hmm.
And deliver what you know through your experience, through story, to the audience. And that's what, going on stage, I don't get nervous when I go on stage, because I don't make it about myself. If I'm nervous, I'm making it about myself. I make it about the audience. And the other thing is, nobody's good when they first start. So if you want to get good and get great, you got to put the reps in and understand that nobody starts off great. Mm-hmm. There's no great person on this planet that didn't put time in behind the scenes. Nobody was looking, blood, sweat, and tears, so to speak. And do that. Now, the other thing you mentioned about getting your list together and doing it yourself, I guess that's a good thing to do. I did it myself at first, but it's terrible. It sucks. And I
It's
did
a
a
lot of
research.
work.
I
It's
did
a
a
lot of work.
research project recently on what it takes to get actually booked on 15 top 5% podcasts.
Uh-huh.
And you know how many hours it takes on average?
Mm-mm.
94 hours. because
94 hours to get
you
on
got to do
15.
research, you got to prepare yourself, you got to search and find the contact information for those hosts. You got to get your one sheet together. What are you going to send to them to get their attention? You got to reach out to them. You got to follow up with them. And then when you
Yeah.
finally get booked, then you got to get on, find a date, get on the show. And then also, if you're going to do it right, you got to get the raw content from the host, and then you got to repurpose it. And then you got to repurpose it into blog posts. You got to repurpose it into little clips and reels and TikToks and LinkedIn posts to become omnipresent everywhere. But 94 hours for 15 top 5% shows.
Wow. That's a lot. That's a whole lot.
Yeah. And that's why when people come to us, they're like, oh, you do all that for us? Because that's what we do. We get people booked on
Yeah.
top 5% shows. So when you have the system and process already together, you already have the network together, you already have the shows all sectioned out for the genres and the niches, however you pronounce it, then that speeds up the process. So then
Yeah,
you can
it
focus and
does.
stay in your genius of whatever your expertise is. And then you can show up and perform. And it
Hmm.
takes all the other distractions away from you.
Yeah.
So that's what I figured
And
out on my journey.
and I think what it comes down to as well is whether it's you pitching yourself or it's someone else pitching you. First of all, if you have a show, it opens a million doors for you to be able to build those relationships to then get on other shows. But if you are, it all comes down to relationships.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
once you have been a guest, then it's, asking for a referral or asking for a recommendation. You can lay that groundwork, but it all comes down to building the relationships.
Well, yeah, because listen, would you rather be cold pitched or do cold pitching or warm connection?
Warm connection, hands down,
And
every
and
time.
that's the thing. Like, so when we work with people like the shows, the hosts, they know who we are.
Yep.
So they know we vetted the guest. They trust, and it goes back to the word trust. They trust us
Hmm.
versus you're reaching out cold. You got to do it, I guess, if you don't have any other avenues, but it's better than nothing.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, why not speed up the process? Why not tap into other people's networks and expertise? Matter of fact, any person that's going on podcasts has an expertise that they want people to reach out to them for.
Hmm.
When you don't do that in your own life, you're not willing to work with other experts, be coached. If you're a coach and you don't have a coach, if you're a mentor, you don't have a mentor, that's when imposter syndrome sets in and inauthenticity sets in.
Hmm.
So and what people will notice is their business will go up when they start investing in themselves,
Hmm.
investing in coaches, investing in people that experts in different areas, because then when they go to sell their product or service, the people they're talking to will sense the authenticity and the fact that they believe what they're saying. And
Hmm.
so I've seen it before where people won't take money that they've gotten and accumulated and invest it in things that can make them go faster and further.
Hmm.
And then when they go to sell something, they have a hard time asking people for money.
Hmm.
But it's because they're not willing to separate with the money and invest in themselves.
Yeah. It absolutely is. And I think I'm going to link in the show notes an episode I just did on the ROI of coaching because you're going to get your ROI unless you have a complete schmuck that you hire, which hopefully you do your research and that doesn't happen. But there are times when, you think you're buying one thing and you get something completely different, which is very unfortunate. And there are people that are very deceiving. But the majority of the cases, you will get at least 50% or yeah, 50%. No. How do I say that? You're going to 50 times your investment is what I'm trying
Yeah.
to say. You're not
Yeah.
getting
Yeah.
50% of your investment. You're 50
No.
times in your investment.
Yeah. Not only that, though, you have to understand that these things work when you invest in yourself, when you work. Some
Well,
people
yeah, you
think that
can't expect anything if you don't
they
work.
put some money into something, throw money at a problem, so to speak, and
No.
then they don't do the work and then they blame the person that they paid.
Yeah, it has to be intentional action, right? And if you're given a recommendation, we have to remember that someone else looking into our business can see more than we can see ourselves. And sometimes that's simply a mindset block. Sometimes it's actually the systems, the processes, the tools, something deeper or more of a construct within our business than just our mindset. But it helps to have those eyes coming in and looking. So, okay,
Yeah.
Mike, we got to wrap up. But tell me, if you were to tell somebody, um, or actually, I'm going to shift gears. I'm actually going to ask you this question instead. I want to know. because you said you're a Christian and you're a follower of Christ. I want to know how that has impacted your business growth journey.
Well, it really comes down to having a filter to filter my thoughts, words, actions, and the people I keep around me through. So I
Mm,
like to eliminate confusion and chaos because confusion leads to chaos. And when there's chaos, it's impossible to have peace, success. So what it does for me is when I have a thought, does that thought align with me being a Christian? Does it align with the word? When I speak, does it align with the word? When I act and my behaviors, does that align with my beliefs? What about the people that surround myself with? Are the people around me basically giving off the light that's supposed to give off? And one of the things that I've had, to work on in the past, I'm a little Italian guy. I used to watch Goodfellas, and Joe Pesci had a mouth on him, and I used to have a mouth on me. And my wife would get on me all the time, and it would annoy me that she'd get on me. And I'm like, it's just, I don't look at it like you look at it. It's not really a curse word. It's like an emphasis. But then I started to realize, and she finally made me realize that that doesn't align with who you're supposed to be and who you say you are.
mm-hmm,
So what do? I still have, occasional curse that slips out, but most of the time it's not in alignment with what I want to do and what I want to push out to the world. So why would I do it? So
mm-hmm,
binary decisions, it's either going towards or away. It's either building or it's destroying. And binary decisions eliminate confusion.
mm-hmm.
So that's probably the biggest impact that it's had on my life and business.
I love that so much. And the closer we get in relationship with him, right, the more aware we are of all of those things that you said, the people we're around, the things that come out of our mouth, the things that we're consuming. So it's, yeah.
Well, the other thing is that it's not our job to preach to people. As Christians, we're not supposed to preach to people. To me, we're supposed to be living demonstrations so that people see a difference in you. And then they start to get curious, observe, and ask questions. And then you can speak into it from your experience. And most people get it wrong where they'll just start preaching everything to people and they're not a living demonstration of what they're talking about. And no wonder most people look at it like, not most people, a lot of people look at Christians as hypocrites.
Yeah.
So I don't want that to be the case. I want to
No.
be a living demonstration, um, and let God shine through me and out to the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree 100%. And it is sad that oftentimes there is a, I guess hypocrisy is the only word that I can really use to describe it because we're saying one thing and living something completely different. And if they don't go hand in hand, it's never going to convey what's meant to be conveyed. People aren't going to understand. They're going to be confused. And obviously, confusion does nothing but create chaos.
And we have an obligation not to feed into confusion.
Right? Yeah.
So don't be the person that feeds into confusion, which is causing chaos. We see it all the time. We mentioned offline about the election season right now. There's a lot of chaos, a lot of confusion. And
Yeah.
the world and the country and families cannot be successful and thrive in this environment. It's just
No,
not possible.
no, no. Yeah, and we won't go into the hypocrisy there and the lies and the deceit that is happening every single time you turn on the TV. But but it's true. I mean, we really have to, but I think that goes to, since you brought it up, I think it goes to, making those decisions based on your faith. Is this right or is this wrong? Is this good or is this bad? Not only for yourself, but like you said earlier, thinking about other people. There's a lot of other people we have to consider too, our children, the future generations, grandchildren someday, who knows? But it's and I like that you emphasize too, when you get on a stage, you're not thinking about yourself, you're thinking about who's in the audience and who is going to take away this information and everything you say to be able to transform or improve their lives. And I think when we start looking at whether a podcast guest or speaking engagement, which are two of my favorite ways to market, um, those are opportunities that we can literally change the trajectory of an entire family's life if we are there to serve. And that's the viewpoint that we go from.
Yep, 100%. You
All
you
right.
can't have anything for yourself unless you want it for all people.
Yeah. Oh, that's powerful. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So, Mike, how can the listeners find you or even work with that one?
So my Instagram is my favorite place. I DM all the time. I'm in my DMs. Mikey C Rock, MikeyCroc, Mikey C Rock. You can DM me there, check out our content, and also go to the number one agency.com, the number one agency.com, and book a discovery call with us. But you can see everything on there. And if you have any questions, just reach out to me. I'm happy to talk to you. I wake up every morning obsessed with helping people. So I'm a very, very accessible person.
I love it. And you're great. You're a great guy and your whole team
Thank
is
you.
great. I've met a
Thank you.
couple of them now and they're all just absolutely fabulous. And then your podcast is What Are You Made Of?
Yeah, I have What Are You Made Of? And that's on all the podcast platforms. It talks about the ingredients that have gone into making the guests who they are. But I also started a podcast tour with a new show called That One Podcast with Mike C Rock. We're going to cities throughout the country over the next year. And when I started to promote that, it got picked up by the Motivation and Success Network, which is a TV show streaming that is actually the Netflix of personal development and entrepreneurship. So people can check that out as well. And we're going around different cities and looking for people that are that one in their industry to interview them and share their story and what makes them that one.
I love it. Now, can people come and watch that or is it live, like a live show or is it recorded?
So the vision is eventually this will be tour stops that we'll go on, and then we can have people come to those that aren't guests even and be behind the scenes and then network afterwards as well. So that's the vision for it. The first stop in LA was 3 people that I interviewed, and they all connected while we were there behind the scenes. But eventually, yeah, I want to make it so that people can come watch behind the scenes and interact and everything. Yeah.
That's super. I love it. All right. Thank you, Mike, for being here. It was just such an honor to share you with
Thank
my
you.
listeners.
Thank you, Robin. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Listeners, if you found this information helpful, please share it with a friend, a colleague, a peer. Let's together spread the word and create that ripple effect of good in the world. And if you'd be so inclined, a rating and review would be so incredibly fabulous because that is how we get into more ears and create more of an impact. Have a great day, and I will see you all next week. And that's a wrap, friends. A heartfelt thank you for being here. I know there are many other ways that you could spend your time, so I truly appreciate you joining me. And be sure and visit the website, therobingraham.com/resources for a plethora of resources to help you grow your business for long-term success.